Ciao, jewelry making friends. My name is Joeebalestrieri. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I'm so happy that you have found me. And if you're returning, welcome back. I am working on some deliciousness from the dollar bead box and the dollar bead bag for the month of March. Their headquarters is in Chicago, so the theme of their box was these beautiful purple Czech glass and some green leaf beads and white beads. So let me set that aside. So I started to play around with the purple and some sagey, very neutral green that I pulled from my stash. And I was just so inspired by some of the things that were in the box. These little small Czech glass tulips. There were these larger tulips. There were these little fluted like melon beads. And there were so many beautiful beads. And we did get a copper toggle clasp. It was really a copper, purple, and white themed box. And so I have largely used the things from the box, but I have pulled in some things from my stash, some copper 8/0 seed beads, a few little copper spacers, some jump rings. I did have this little strand of purple Czech glass flowers from the craft store, and I opened that and I have stolen a few flowers from that, and I had this beautiful golem bead in my stash, and I've already wire wrapped it and kind of dealt with the oversized holes with a little small 2mm Czech glass little bead. And I also have something else here that I had in my stash that I picked up at a bead show. It is a copper finished crystal rondelle spacer, and so I've kind of added that in to the little bird here. And so I'm kind of like going with a theme of flowers and birds and leaves and kind of this spring palette. And what has happened to me is I started to just design one bracelet, and it started to be longer and longer and longer because there are so many beautiful beads in this box, and I had quite a bit in my stash that I wanted to use. So I'm going to finish this bracelet with you and talk to you a little bit about the design. I have this funky little cha-cha section, and literally I didn't really intend to do this, but I think it's going to be really unique and really pretty element in my bracelet. So I literally made a simple loop on a piece of 20 gauge copper wire, and I used copper ball head pins and those seed beads and just created a bunch of simple little dangles and thread them on that little length of wire, and then did another simple loop on this end, and that is going to be almost like a living bead in my bracelet, like a little flower garden bead. I'm really excited to see how that wears. It's something I have never tried, so I'm kind of designing on the fly with all of you. So this bit is mostly a connecting project, just simple loops. I will just show you what I have done for these. So I have these just in my stash. I have these ball head pins in copper, and I just love these. These are from Potomac Beads from their Athena cast line, and they just have a very high quality plating, and I love working with those. So that is what you see in this little flower garden section that I was working on. And then I have used 20 gauge copper wire with an anti-tarnish coating on it for all of my links that have been done, and I'm actually going to make my own clasp for this with some Soft Flex 18 gauge non-tarnish copper wire. And I just went into my stash, and I have this gorgeous chain, like antique copper chain, and the links in this are not soldered, so it's going to give me a little design possibilities there because I can open them and kind of modify it. So I believe that's going to make its way into this bracelet. And just to tell you, I literally had forgotten some of the things that I had purchased from the website for dollar bead and dollar bead bag and dollar bead box, and they just I as I went into my stash, I remember how much I love this company. So these are some of the other things that you see, that these are from their website that I just had in my stash. These are Czech glass pearls, and this is a purple with, oh, wrong thing. This is the purple with the copper wash. This is from their website, and it was a 25-piece Czech glass bellflower, and I just pulled that out of my stash because it went so well with the other things that they gave us in the box. So that is the little flowers that you see here in this little created bead. And then they have on their, well, I've had these for a while, so I don't know if this is still on their website, but it's just an example of what you can get. It's a 4mm and a 6mm Czech glass luster pearl. And I mean, the quality of these pearls is absolutely stunning. You can see around the holes how beautiful the coating is. And so, you know, if you are not subscribed to the Dollar Bead Club or the Dollar Bead Bag, it's very affordable. It is a great value, and you do have to be a member to shop their website, but then you can go back and most things on the website are $1. They do have some Czech glass buttons and some other things that are a little bit more, but it is a company that I highly recommend. And I had stopped getting the monthly thing for a little while, but I really love it, and I'm so happy that I'm getting it again, and I'll be doing videos with them. So I'm going to do the little connecting on this bracelet, and so I'm going to start with this focal bead, and I just stacked a little Czech glass bird onto that copper wire, one of those rondelle spacers, and one of these beautiful little faceted Czech glass fire polish beads that was in the box. And I have done all of my loops with my one-step looper. I use the 2 1/4mm one-step looper for these because I'm not going to do jump rings in between my sections, and that little larger loop will give me some freedom of movement on the bracelet. And then I have used my 1.5mm one-step looper for a couple of things, like this little beaded chain that I was working on for my second bracelet. And I used the 1.5mm one-step looper for all my little baubles that went into this component. And this is just super easy. So maybe before I start connecting, I'll just show you quickly what I did. So I'll just take one of these ball head pins. I don't need to add any more to this, but like for this little flower bead here, I just took one of my, let me grab an extra little bead here. I just took one of these little flowers, and I just started with one of these copper 8mm seed beads, and then just thread this flower on from the front, and that's simply my little component. Now I do have, I may try this, I was going to do leaves for another component on my second bracelet, but look at that. Just as I'm talking to you, I thought how pretty it would be to have a little Czech glass leaf with a copper wash at the end. So I'll do that, and I'll show you exactly what I did. I just stacked those things on that ball head pin, and I'm just going to put the head pin right through my one-step looper, and let me move that leaf up a little bit. And so if you can see, I'm just going to be really careful and back the edge of my leaf bead off just about 1mm, just so that as it turns that loop, I'll close it very slowly. I am not putting any stress on my beads, and then just gently pull that down and close at the same time, and it can complete the loop. The loop is centered on the head pin, and there's no stress on any of the glass beads, and just remove it, and I got a perfect little, whoops, I'm dropping tools, got a perfect little loop, little simple loop for that little component. So maybe that's going to make its way on my other bracelet. Oh, I do need to. So one thing with this, with the one-step looper, is sometimes you'll find that your loops are not closed perfectly if you didn't line up your wire in the tool. I generally don't care, because it's a simple loop, and the whole reason for doing that is to open and close it easily to add it onto chain or whatever you're going to do. But if that's the case, it's a simple, you know, matter of doing that, and then it gives you a chance to like open and close your pliers on the loop to work harden. So that is what I did for this whole little component, and that is how I did my simple loops on everything else. So let me start by connecting the components that I have already made on this bracelet. This will come together very quickly because I've already done the boring part of trimming, you know, making all the loops, and so that's going to be a simple matter. I did wire wrap my golem bead just because the holes are very large in it, and I wanted to keep it facing forward, and then everything else has a simple loop. So this little funny component that I made here, I think maybe I'm not going to try, this is a simple loop, but I think I'm not going to try to open that. I think it will be easier to open the loop on my bird bead and slip that component on. I've actually never done a little cha-cha bead like this. I normally thread my simple loops right onto my stringing material, and I just thought this might work really well for a bracelet like this that is all individual components. And the bird kind of looks like he's sitting on a bush or on a, you know, on a flowering tree. I really like that. So let's go to the next flower. I have everything sort of lined up the way that I wanted to connect it. And yeah, on this little component with all the busyness, it's easier to open the loop of the next bead instead of the loops on that. But look, I mean, I've already done a couple of connections, and look how gorgeous that is. I just love it. So in this month's box, we did get a beautiful copper toggle, and I love it, but I went into my stash because I had this pretty little like flowering vine toggle. I'll show you the other end too. It's a little flower, and I just had this in my stash, and I just thought it was so pretty. So I decided on this bracelet that I'll save my bead that came in the box for another or my toggle that came in the box for another project. And while I'm doing these connections, for those of you who saw my video where I titled it A Whale of a Bead Haul, I was in Sarasota. I was visiting a shop that I have been to before to make a video and make some purchases. It's called Bead Abode, and I did a video on my purchases and the shop. And while I was on my trip, I was riding bikes, and a 70-foot sperm whale beached itself, and it was going to be euthanized because the marine biologist determined that it had been sick out in the wild for a very long time. But as it turns out, the next day it passed away on its own. And so I just wanted to give an update to those of you who saw the video and care about the whale. It is an endangered species, and the marine biologist and even the people that I saw on the beach when I was filming, everyone had a lot of concern for the whale and really were hoping that he could be rescued. That's what everyone was hoping, and everyone was very, very respectful. And I just wanted to give an update that he did pass away, and it was really sad, although it was awesome to see him in person. I've lived in Florida since 1969, and I have never seen a whale beach itself. It's very unusual for them to be on our coast this close to shore. But the other thing that I thought might make some of you feel better about the situation is, if you did not see the news, the marine biologist and her team, they took tissue samples from every part of the whale for research to figure out why he was sick and get some answers as to why he came ashore and all of that. So what she said on the to the press, to the media, was that they did not want him to have died in vain. So that's a little bit of good news. It is a protected species, and maybe they will get some answers and, you know, save some other whale lives. So I have the whale on my mind. I have all week. For some reason, maybe seeing him in person, it really touched me. And so I just thought I'd give an update. I'm getting a little emotional because I really, really care for animals a lot. They're wonderful. So let me try this little bracelet on and see if I need to add jump rings to make this work a little bit better. I love the way it looks, and I love this little cool cha-cha section. I don't know if you can see how I simply had strung in a random pattern the two different Czech glass flowers and the leaves with those ball head pins, and just made a busy little bead, and it is so pretty and so easy. So let me see how I did with my, whoops, I have this upside down. Let me turn it this way. This toggle has like the decoration on the front of it. And normally, you know, when the camera's rolling, as anyone who films their work will tell you, when the camera's rolling, you cannot clasp anything. It's just the way it is. It looks like I may actually need to add a little jump ring to my clasp. It fits. Let me see. I tried to put my smaller beads on the end of my pattern that I was stringing, because I know that sometimes you need that little extra space, and I don't want to struggle with this all the time. So yeah, it looks like I do need to add a little jump ring to the end of this, but I can do that when I pause the video. I'm just going to add a couple of jump rings right here. And so I'll do that when I'm finished filming the other one. But this sweet little bird and flower bracelet is done, and it's very, I mean, it just speaks to me. I just love, love, love these colors, and I love having added in those copper crystal rondelle spacers just for a tiny bit of bling in this. It is beautiful. I love the copper and gold wash, and I just love everything about it. I will have this in my jewelry wardrobe for a very long time. And so all I am going to do is add a couple of jump rings right here, just to make taking it on and off easier. So here I made a little beaded chain out of the beads that we got in the box, and I just have one more to do, at least to have these two the same. So let me show you what I did. I have a little piece here of 20 gauge copper wire, and on these I did use the 1.5 millimeter one-step looper, and I'm just going to put this in. There's no need to do this and put it all the way through, because you just waste all that wire. So I'm just going to put my wire in like right there. I just need enough space for the tool to wrap the wire around that mandrel. And so let me try to show you what it does. So there, it cut that little tiny scrap, and then I can just pull this wire back and make sure my loop is centered, and that loop is done, and I get a perfect little loop. And then I am just going to thread on this little Czech glass fire polish bead and get a hold of that loop. If you make your loops in, you know, the wrong direction, or they're not lined up, very easy to correct that with your pliers. So then I'm just going to do the same thing we did on the other one, just back this out. I have the tool just gently closed so that I can have a look, and I'm just going to open a little bit and just back that out just a millimeter or so, and just slowly close it. It cuts my wire, and then as the tool is closing, I can just pull that down. That way my Czech glass bead is not being damaged by the tool, and I have just centered my loop on the wire. And then, you know, while it's still in the tool, one of the things I do is go ahead with a pair of pliers. I have great control, and just straighten it, and when it comes out, it is a perfect little component. And I love the one-step looper because I have arthritis really bad in my right hand, and that tool stops that constant twisting motion that we have to do when we're making these kind of loops. So I really love it for that. It kind of saves my hand. And then to add this to my beaded chain, I'm just going to open the loop on the other one that I made and add this on. I didn't open it wide enough. Open it wide enough to add it on, put that loop there, and then close it really well. Little work hardening. And so I have these two little tiny links of beaded chain for my second bracelet. And so now I'm just going to continue like that. I do need to get another one of my little Czech glass leaves. And these Czech glass leaves are also from the Dollar Bead website. I do not remember when I got them or how long I've had them, but they have a lot of beautiful leaves on their website. So the next little component I think I'm going to make is going to be I think I'm going to wire wrap this next component instead of a simple loop, because I want to kind of put these two Czech glass leaves beside each other with this copper spacer in between, and I want them to stay in that direction. So I'm going to just give myself a 90-degree bend and make a wire wrapped loop, and then I'll feed my leaves and my spacer on. And so the reason I'm doing this is because with a simple loop, it's not going to lock the beads into staying facing the direction I want them. They would spin around, and there are times when you want that, but in this case I would like those leaf beads to stay facing the way that I connect them to the bracelet. Get my cutters, trim that away. I'll come back and tuck in that cut end after I have created my component. So I'm going to do it this way. I don't know if you can see, but there's like a little bit flatter side of this Czech glass leaf, and this side has a bit more of a curve. And I'm just going to make like this little, almost this little component. And what I want it to do when I wire wrap it, I want it to stay like that. I want the leaves to stay like that on my bracelet behind my flowers. So I'm going to come to this end and put a wire wrapped loop and, you know, kind of get those leaves to stay in that position and not spin around. So do the same thing. Try to put my wire in the same spot on the pliers so that my loops on both ends of this component are the same. And I like to, the camera is in my way, but I'm trying to like just line up that loop and just try to do the same number of wraps that I did on this end. But in this case it may not be possible because, as I said, I have wire wrapped this because I want to keep those leaves in the position that I want them in. So let's see how we go. One more in there. That looks great. That's what I wanted. It ended up being one more wrap on this end than on the other, but that bothers me less than my leaf beads not being in the facing up position that I want them in. Let me get my other plier and just line up those loops. Certain beads with like these have that little bend in it. You have to make a little allowance for the bend to get your pliers in there, but I love that little component. That's going to go right there. I think that, well, I'll wire wrap that so the tulip bead will also stay the way I want it to face. I closed this loop. I'm going to do a simple loop on this glass flower, and so before I wire wrap this end, I want to attach it right to my little leaf component that I made. That's why I turned it around. So there's that little component. And so this time, before I complete my wrapping, I'll attach it. Get it nice and lined up. Let me just open this just a little bit so that I can feed this on. It may have to, actually maybe just perfect, just like that. And just gently tuck that little end. Oh, that's so pretty. I love it. I'm not sure what is going to be necessary for the orientation of my loops on my tulip, but for now we will leave it like that. And on this one I am going to use my 2.5 millimeter one-step looper, and it's going to be a simple component with just that little glass bead. I feel a little sharpness here, and sometimes that will keep your wire from going through the beads, so that's much better. I love how perfect those loops are and consistent for a design like this. And I also love seeing that little bit of copper through the glass. I hope the camera is showing you what I'm seeing. And I'm going to do the same thing, just back my bead off the tool just about a millimeter. Just close it gently and bend that bead back so there's no stress on the flower. And I got perfect simple loops. So now I just have to decide how I am going to connect my beaded chain, my 2 links of beaded chain. I was thinking, let's try it. What I was thinking is to open this simple loop because it is the 2.25 millimeter size. And let's see, I don't know if all this will fit on there, but I could also put those. Okay, I'm talking to myself because I'm just sort of working out how I want to connect this. This is a little bit of design on the fly because I sat and sort of selected from so many beautiful beads and kind of in my head, you know, worked out what I was going to put in the bracelet. I really like that. And then I think what I'll do is I want these to be dangling, so I think what I will do is open this jump ring here and just slip it right over this end, just so my simple loop, it doesn't get too crowded with too many things strung inside. Get my plier out of the way so I can close it. See if I'm going to like that. Oh, it's really pretty. Put the other one on. And I will say, I do not totally remember, I do have these Czech glass leaves labeled, but they had extremely small holes, and I started out struggling to even get a very thin gauge jump ring through. And so what I ended up doing, I like that. Let's see how it hangs. I may have to change that connection, but for now I like it. So what I ended up doing, and I can show you very quickly in order to be able to get my jump ring through the leaves, if you've watched any of my other videos, I'm sure you have seen me do this, but I have this little set of bead reamers that I got from Amazon, and it has a couple of files in it and a couple of sizes of bead reamers, and I have a battery one that you need to like go underwater. But if you have a bead that has a hole that's either not cleared or it's just a bit too small, you can start with the smallest little bead reamer, and it's just like a little file. You have to be very gentle because it is glass, and you know, you can break it here and then it's no good. But this is what I did on my other two beads, leaf beads, because I was struggling to get the jump rings in, and these just work really great without needing to, you know, have a battery reamer and water. And then what I do is I start with the small one to clear the hole gently, and then move up to the next size little bead reamer, and I'm just like going back and forth, and it is amazing how much extra space inside the hole that little reaming action does for what you want to do. If you know, if your wire is not moving freely in a bead, or you can't get a jump ring in. I actually just made a mess on my mat, but I just thought I'd share that with you, and I can link that little set of tools that are very inexpensive, and honestly I keep them on the side of my work table, and I use them all the time. So I'm going to open this end and add my tulip, and I will have to see, I didn't work out the orientation of all my loops, so I will have a look and see how things are laying and see if I need to turn any of my loops in a different direction. Let's see, it looks like that one's going to be okay, that one's going to be okay. Last one. And now to finish this off, let's see if I'm going to be happy with these leaves like this. Not sure if I am. The jump rings are sliding down over my beaded chain, which may not be a bad thing. This is going to be the closure on this bracelet. So I need to, let me put a jump ring to connect my two sections of beaded chain. Make sure I don't have anything twisted. And on this end, I am going to do a handmade hook on this end, and it is going to hook into this piece of chain. So I think what I will do is I can go ahead and add the chain, and then I'll remove, it's quite a long length, I'll remove what I'm not going to use. And once I make my hook, I can get a good measurement and decide how much of the chain I need to take off. I am loving this so far. That is so pretty. And actually, this little component that we did together as a sample would be perfect on the end of my clasp. So let me cut a small length of my 18 gauge non-tarnish wire from Softflex company. And you don't need very much to make a hook. This is probably about, well, I can measure. This is about 4 inches, and that is still probably more than I will need. And I'm going to start by just making a little spiral, and I need I don't know if you can see, but it's not a nice blunt cut on that end, so I just want to do that. I want a nice blunt cut. And I'm just going to start by making a little decorative spiral. And I want it to be, I need a little, as I'm spiraling, I need to create a little space for my jump ring to fit through my decorative spiral. So I don't want it to be a really tight spiral. But I am going to hammer this, and when you hammer, you change the shape and things kind of spread out. I'm going to, you know, flatten it and give it some texture. So I'm just going to do a spiral, kind of look at my scale of things, maybe one more. And then on this end, I'm going to put my plier in about there. And again, after I hammer, I can make some adjustments to this. Let me turn my hand this way. And so, well, I don't know, can you see? Do it this way. And then I'm just going to bring this over that barrel. I want a very dramatic, exaggerated, let me show you what we have, because this is going to be the hook that hooks into my chain. And so, as I said, we will be hammering. So let me trim this a little bit right about there. And I also want to do a little spiral. Now you could flatten this and like splay it if you want, but I always find that is a tiny bit too sharp. So I'm going to put like a teeny tiny little like decorative curl on this end. It has to be able to go through the chain, so it does. When I hammer it, I hope I don't spread it out so much that it doesn't easily go through the chain. So I am actually going to pause the camera because I do need to hammer this, and I really want to flatten it, and I want to texture it, and I want to do it on both sides. So I have my little bench block. It's quite heavy, and I will be using a ball peen hammer to do this. I'll flatten with this side, and then this side will give me that dented kind of hammered organic look to my little hook, but it will be quite noisy. I really have to pound it. It would make the camera jump. So I'm just going to pause the camera and do that, and I will be right back. I've finished hammering, and you can see what happened to my hook. It's a little bit out of shape. It's flattened and it's kind of spread out a little bit, and that is okay. I left it like this so that I could show you, because from here you can do a little hand sculpting. I see right here I do want to close up this little loop, and I might even need to come in and cut it and tighten it. Actually, let me sample it on my chain and see. No, it still goes through. It still goes through. So from here you can you need a little space to put your jump ring, and I think it will fit right through this part. I sometimes try to leave a little space from the first. You see this first little coil, that is where I generally like to add it, but it's very organic, free form little clasp, and so sometimes you just have to find that little sweet spot where you can connect. And like I said, from here you can adjust the shape a little bit. You can come back in with your round nose pliers, whatever, hand sculpt it, whatever you need to do to have it have the shape that you like. It's work hardened because it has been hammered, but it is a really pretty little clasp. And I think, let me see, I think I might want to just stay in the camera, play with this a little bit, kind of, like I say, after you hammer. And sometimes I'll even go back to it after it's on my bracelet and just see how it looks. Maybe kick that out a little bit. These are so much fun to make. They're inexpensive. They take very little wire, and there's really no right or wrong. You just literally play with the shape until you're happy with it. I think that's pretty cute. I'll leave it alone for now and attach it to my bracelet. And so let me see, this one is pretty good for my length, and I think I'm going to get a small jump ring, a really small jump ring, and if it will fit. I wonder if this is too small to reach through. Let me see. I can try. I might actually have to use another one of the larger ones because of the space in my loop, but let's try. Just get this open. And let's see if it will fit in this little space right here. Oh, it does. Let's see how we do. Oh, it looks like it's going to work. And I might even get a second one of those if it would fit, and I think it would. But you can even do the double jump ring. It gives a little extra security, and it's pretty. But I like that. I really like that. So now from here I can sort of decide the length of my chain, and as I said, this can be adjustable. I'm going to give myself a couple of extra lengths. This beautiful chain that I have is not soldered, and these rings, as thick and beautiful as they are, I can open them, and they are tough, but I love them. And I actually am going to connect this little flower while I have it open right on the end. You don't have to put a drop or a dangle when you're doing like an extender chain, but for me, I cannot just leave the chain plain. I just always want something on the end. This is a nice stiff, I'm having trouble closing it back. It's really, the gauge of this chain is really thick, which is great for a closure, and it has beautiful architecture. And I don't know, let me try this on and see if I'm going to want to change the connection of my leaves that are dangling. Let's see. This is going to be an easy one to put on. Oh, very pretty. Let's see if my leaves hang flat. Oh, it's so pretty, and I love that it's adjustable, and look how pretty that little hook is. Everything looks really good. This is so pretty, and I have that beautiful hook. I have this little dangle, and I can, you know, make this looser if I want. I can make it, let it be a little bit tighter if I want. But what a beautiful bracelet. I absolutely loved this month's dollar bead box and dollar bead bag. The value is incredible for all of the Czech glass that you get, and they have beautiful findings as well. So I'm just going to add a couple of jump rings to this toggle, and I will put some pictures up, clean up my mat, and I have a whole nother bracelet project coming with dollar bead box. Let me just grab my handful of things. If you saw my unboxing, then you have likely seen these, but I was in my stash pulling out some things for yet another bracelet. And look at this. We had these little charms, and I had these tulips in my stash. These were actually from this month's box, this white and copper, and there was a white Czech glass heart and these clear Czech glass flowers with the AB finish, and then I had some flowers from the Softflex company that have the white and copper. So when I was designing my purple bracelets, I was pulling things for yet another bracelet video. So I hope you'll subscribe and tap the bell notification so when my next video is posted, you don't miss it. And also, if you would like to take a moment to email me pictures of your jewelry supervisors, the little furry faces, your cats and dogs. We even have a person in our community that has a ferret, and so I would love to have some of those pictures. I've been putting them up a little bit here and there at the end of my videos, because as I was chatting with everyone, I realized that almost all of us have little helpers with 4 paws, and it's just a really joyful thing to share that with the community. So if you have a moment and would like to send me a photo in the name of your pet, that would be great. I'll put my email in the description box. And I thank you so much for watching today. If you would like to subscribe to the Dollar Bead Box or the Dollar Bead Bag, I will put my code in the description box under the video. And I thank you for watching. I hope everyone is safe and well and having fun on their beading mats. Ciao, jewelry making friends.